I'm here today with TJ Payne. TJ is the author of the smash hit Intercepts, which has sold over 95,000 copies and has had over 25 million page reads on Kindle Unlimited since its publication in 2019. He's also the author of The Venue and In My Father's Basement. Born and raised in Portland, Oregon, he moved to Hollywood with plans to write romantic comedies, but as he worked on his craft, he found his stories drifting toward more sinister themes. And aren't we all so grateful he found his home in horror? Welcome.
Thank you so much. Glad to be here.
I know I kind of barely scratched the surface there, so can you fill in the blanks? Tell us more about you.
Um, I I've always been a writer. I've one of those people who grew up just when the teacher had the option of doing an essay or the art project, it was always essay, please. I've always communicated and expressed myself through the written word. And so for the first portion of my adult life, I wanted to be a screenwriter. And so after college, I came down to Hollywood, worked as an assistant, mostly in post production. I got in with Rob Reiner's crew and worked on a lot of movies with him. And I got to say, Rob was the sweetest, nicest man. I was like lowest person in the office, and he would say hi to me by name every morning, take us all out for lunch all the time. So it was a great experience. And because I was in with that crew, the editor I was working with did Harry Met Sally, Princess Bride, all of those. I was like, okay, this is where my network is. I'm going to be a romantic comedy writer. And that's where I taught myself story structure, was with the rom-com and the cute meet and building it all off that relationship. And over time, I just realized my tastes were darker than that. And I just started veering very organically into horror. And I found myself in horror, and I resisted it for a bit because it came very easily to me. And people always say writing should be hard. And I was like, well, okay, rom-coms and comedy is really hard for me. Horror is very easy, so I should be doing the hard one, right? And ultimately, when I finally made the switch, things clicked into place, and I've just been having a blast creating stories in that genre ever since.
That's awesome. And I think it's great that horror comes easy to you. I mean, it comes easy to me too. And sometimes we probably get the weird looks of people being like, this is easy for you. But I'm with you there. I'm like, I definitely, go towards the sinister whenever I can.
Yep, it's just where my mind goes. And in hindsight, even I had one comedy that got me a lot of attention in Hollywood, and it was based in the post-apocalypse. It was like a road trip movie through this alien invasion wasteland where all these dead people are being processed. So it was the dark macabre has always just been hanging out in the back there.
I'm with you on that. And when you're writing, how do you get started? Like, what comes first? Do you have the characters? Do you have the plot, the setting, or something else?
Usually it's just a basic idea.
Mhm.
Just like this is the world or the concept, and it can be very loose. And then it is a matter of finding the people who can exploit that concept in the most interesting way. And so then it's about, for me, just building those characters into real people
Mhm.
and trying to make them as relatable as possible, especially the villains. I feel you want to. I have always believed, I've always been more scared of humans than
Mhm.
anything else because we are the most messed up creatures. And I do not trust humans particularly. So I like to make everyone feel very human, very real, very grounded, even when they're in this heightened world. And so
Mhm.
once the characters are there and that basic kernel of a premise is there, then everything else kind of sort of slots into place a bit. It was like, what's the worst thing you can do to this character? What does this character love? What do they want? And how does that all fit together with this concept?
Yeah. So are you a plotter or a pantser then?
I'm very much a plotter, and that's from the Hollywood background because after
Mhm.
I self-published my books, that's when I started getting traction in my screenwriting career. So I went a long time working on screenplays, going to pitches, trying to do open writing assignments, meeting producers, and none of it was like I was getting a lot of opportunities, so to speak, but it was a lot of people saying, "Hi, we really love your script. We can't buy it, we can't make it, but we love your voice. Here's this idea we have. Will you write it for us for free? And then when we'll sell it, and we'll all make so much money." And it would never sell. It would never go anywhere. And so at a certain point, I'd been brought on to adapt this Stephen King short story with this director attached, and my job was to bring his vision to the page. And so I was working very closely with this director for 5, 6 months, crafting this screenplay, this feature film. And by the time we were done, the producer had let the option lapse, and so the underlying property was gone. So we couldn't make this movie. And I had this, and it was all free. I wasn't in the guild yet, so it was this weird breaking moment for me of just, oh, that was 5, 6 months of my writing life, telling the story that was someone else's story, and it was Stephen King's story, and it was this director's vision on that story, and it went nowhere. And is this going to be satisfying to me? And so that is when I started writing the books. I was like, I need to get something out there to an audience to see if I have anything to say, if this is like actually a career for me. And once the books hit, and I was able to look at myself and be like, I've done something. I have something out there. I can call myself a writer. That's when the screenwriting career started taking off. And this is a long roundabout way of saying that once I started getting into, once I started selling feature scripts, once I started getting staffed on TV shows, part of the contract in a TV writer's room is you have to outline. That's just one of the steps you have to turn in. And so I'm very much a plotter because that's just the contractually I've been obligated to be a plotter, and that is something I've carried. I'm training my brain in this way. Why fight it? So I'm a plotter on the books too. I feel I like knowing what end I'm building toward, and that outlining, pre-writing, treatment stage, I actually feel is. I know one of the criticisms of plotting versus pantsing is that plotting, when it feels uncreative, that you're locking yourself in, and I'm like, the outline is such a creative part of the process for me. I love it because you can do big swings in short amounts of time. You can, what happens if we kill our main character at the midpoint? Let's see how that plays out. You can implement that in an afternoon, as opposed to pantsing, when I've tried that and it's like, well, okay, then let's experiment with what happened, what the outcome of that is for the next several weeks as we check that out. So I'm a big believer in plotting. For me, whatever works for any individual writer to get the words on the page and get to the end of the story is what they should do. But I'm definitely a plotter.
See, that's an interesting answer because I've asked a lot of people that. I have done both. That is the best description of plotting. It makes it sound the most fun. I feel like you could really experiment and let's go down that rabbit hole, and then you haven't lost, like you said, weeks of work. So that's an interesting answer. I like that.
Well, and it's so creative. That's what I don't get about the criticism of it, is like that plotting is inherently uncreative. I'm like, no, it is deeply creative. I pants my way through the plotting all the time. Like, just, seat of the pants. What is going to happen if I do this? Or while, doing the outline, it feels like the character might end up this place. Let's see what happens. And you can figure it all out. And then once you get to draft, you're starting to put real meat on the bones. And there's always the opportunity to switch gears when you get that writer's block and it's like, oh, the character didn't want to go in this direction. Let's adjust.
Have you ever had a character really fight your outline to the point where you had to go back and change your outline?
There is, I'll get stuck occasionally. And then it is like, I think one of the things about the more I write, the better I get at realizing where the block is happening. And just being like, okay, there are times where it's like, the characters finding me. I think I can just power through this scene and we'll get
Mhm.
back on track and maybe fix it in the rewrite. There are times where it's like, okay, characters fighting me. Let's just jump over the scene. I know what the next scene is. I'm excited to write that next scene. Let's just get there, see what happens. And then often it's like, oh, the scene that they were fighting me on, that didn't need to exist anyway. I was trying to do something that like it didn't fit in the story and it could be handled with a couple sentences. And I was just trying to create a whole chapter out of nothing. And then
Huh.
there are times where it's like, okay, back to the whiteboard. Let's go beat this out, see where the mistake is. Might this problem might have started 50 pages ago, might have been in act 1. Let's find it. Find
Mhm.
where the breaking point is happening.
So do you kind of edit as you go then?
I tend, well, if I'm having trouble in the current spot I'm writing, then
Mhm.
sometimes it is about a matter of going back.
Mhm.
I do try to get through the rough version first,
Mhm.
and that's what, for me, that's what part of plotting is. It's let's get through the rough version first and put more meat on the bones then, and
Mhm.
then it's the next version is still rough. Let's start fine tuning. And so I don't like going back too much because then,
Mhm.
sometimes you can over adjust the knob, when what you really just need to be doing is figuring out the back half of things. It's like when I was not a very good piano player, but I did take piano lessons in elementary school. And I know back then, instead of drilling down and learning the whole piece, I was always like, I like playing this first part of the piece. I'll just keep playing that. And that will be like my practice session. And mom will hear me practicing, and then I can call it done. And so I'd never learned much in the way of piano, and I never finished much. And it's not a good way to live.
But, it does get you through piano practice, right?
It got, it killed the time on the clock, and it
Well,
made noise in the house, so that means something.
so when you're sitting down and you're either outlining or you're just writing, do you have any rituals? Like, do you need a cup of coffee? Do you need like dim lights? Do you need music? What does that look like for you?
I'm I'm not much of a music writer, and I will say, like in the writers' rooms I've been in, most writers are music writers.
Hmm.
They like their mood music, so I'm pretty abnormal on that one. Um, I'm more and more, I'm actually trying to get out of ritual because I feel sometimes for me, again, this isn't for everyone, but it can be more of a distraction, more of a, well, I can't write until I've had my cup of coffee and I've taken my morning walk. And to a certain degree, it is just like training myself to, no, write when you write, when you
Hmm.
sit down. Like, because there's so many times in life, in a day, where you have these free 30 minutes and the email inbox is clear and you don't have to be anywhere. And it's like, I'm trying to train myself out of that mentality of, well, I have to be in the writing mood, and that takes me 2 hours to get there, so I can't do anything in this 30 minutes. And it's like, no, you can do all sorts of things in that 30 minutes. So, um, more and more, I'm trying to move away from ritual. But I'm a big believer in walks, in its ability to just jog the creative juices. And so I like to, if I'm about to take a walk, have a problem that I want to solve on the walk. And sometimes it is just a matter of like going out for a walk and coming back with this is the hook dialogue in the scene. This is
Hmm.
that exchange that the scene builds around. It's what the scene turns on. And it's a fun phrase that some character is going to say. And if I get that down on the page, I can expand in both directions from there. So walks, love them.
I am the same way. I've been on many a creative walk or solving a problem or, something just feels blocks. I don't know what it is. It's just enormously useful.
I Yes, and especially outside walks, I feel there's
Hmm.
something about like treadmill walks I've never been particularly creative on, and I think there is something about the world is so big. There's so much going on that it kind of blocks out all the nonsense in your mind,
Hmm.
and lets you focus just by walking around the neighborhood in the sun, in nature. It's just, I love it.
Me too. So everybody listening, writer's block, go take a walk. It helps.
Yeah.
And I want to ask you, obviously, about Intercepts. So this is a giant in the horror world. It's like if you start reading horror, you have to read Intercepts. That's what it's like. So can you give just a little introduction to that book and kind of what inspired you?
So the book is about a secret government facility where people are like these horrible things are being done to these people so that they can gain psychic abilities. And that's the baseline premise, but the actual story is about the supervisor of that facility. And he's a guy who's just sort of clocked in, clocked out. He's kind of everyone there sort of turned a blind eye to the things they're doing because they feel it's for the greater good. And until the moment when this supervisor's daughter starts seeing a woman, these hallucinations, and this man realizes that the inmates at this facility have intercepted his daughter's mind to try to communicate with him. And then it becomes a question of how far is he willing to go to save his daughter. And ultimately, the origins of the idea came from I'm a big nonfiction reader, and so I just went down this rabbit hole at one point of uh, you know books about the Cold War and the CIA and the NSA and the US's nuclear arsenal and all the things to safeguard that and all the breaking points in these large bureaucracies around that. And it just created this, you know, this question of like, oh, what would the government do to gather intelligence on foreign adversaries, to get intercepts on the people we're against? And from there, it did become a question of what is the best way into this story. And I felt there was there was a low hanging fruit version where it was all from the point of view of one of the inmates trying to escape. But I felt what was more interesting was the sort of uh, the the guards, the jail keeps, the people manning this facility, and what their humanity is like in that situation. And it became the story. It ultimately became a father-daughter story, and in that way I felt it was more universal to anyone, really. This is this guy who, you take away the torture facility aspect of it, and he has chosen work over family, and he can justify that. You got to make an income, you got to support, but his family has suffered because of it. And when you start the book, he's an every other weekend dad because he's gotten divorced and she's living away from home. And it's now his work is quite literally following him home. That choice that he made to choose work over family is haunting him and trying to rip his family apart. And so that is what the sort of heart of the story became, was this man having to undo those choices that he's made.
And as I mentioned, it's a fabulous book. Everybody should read it. But traditional publishing also took notice, and Penguin Random House went to a highly competitive auction and won the rights to re-release a hardcover version of this on May 5th. I mean, and it has a never before seen bonus chapter. So, I mean, that's amazing. Can you kind of talk about how that all came about?
It was Intercepts has been it is the reception it's gotten from audiences has blown my mind every step of the way. I self-published it back in 2019. So that's an eternity in book years. And most books, they launch well and then they sort of drift downward. That's sort of the natural trajectory of books. And Intercepts, and I've had three that I've self-published, and that's kind of what they all did, except for Intercepts. Intercepts just kept finding an audience, finding more readers. And it was completely organic, the way that word of it sort of spread. People would like it, they'd tell someone would tell someone, and it just kept going that way. And I've had people come up to me and ask, like, how did you get it on Book Talk? How did and I was like, I don't know. If there was a secret sauce to this, I would have replicated it on my other two books. And so it just kept finding fans, finding people who were willing to take a risk on an unknown self-published author. And eventually an agent, a lit agent, reached out to me and said, I just came across this book just randomly and I loved it. I want to take it out to traditional publishers, see what happened. And we did. And that just, it changed everything. We got an offer from the Crown imprint at Penguin Random House, and it's coming out in May. And what's great is I'd been the reason for the gap. I haven't had a book come out since 2020, and that's because I started working in TV writers' rooms. I've been pretty consistently working in Hollywood. I'm very fortunate for that because it's a hard time for writers in Hollywood right now. There's a big contraction in the industry, but I've just always loved the process of writing books. And even though screenwriting was my first dream, I realized that books were so much more satisfying to me. And so this has been just this great opportunity to pivot again and go back to books and let this be my career moving forward.
Awesome. Well, congratulations. I mean, it is so inspiring to see a self-published author and a self-published book reach the audience, reach the success that this has. So seriously, it's an inspiration for all of us.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm very, very fortunate, and I'm very grateful to everyone who took the chance on reading it. Like, it's just, uh, yeah, I'm very fortunate.
And I know I'm not the only person who's read this and thought this would make a really good movie, because you've also sold the film rights to Boulder Light Pictures and New Line Cinema, right?
Yep.
That's awesome. Can you talk about any of that, or is it still a secret?
Uh, there's I don't have many updates on it. It's well, because Boulder Light was at New Line and Warner Brothers, and then their Paramount gave Boulder Light a deal but then Warner Brothers became part of Paramount now, so I don't know where anything's at. So who
Are you
knows?
writing the screenplay?
I'm not. It's an interesting thing. I have these two very different careers that tend not to overlap that much. I
Mhm.
write my film and TV writing is under the name Tom Hanada, which is my legal name. And but when I went to start self-publishing books, I was really scared that I would put books out into the world for the first time. It'd be my writing out in the world and wouldn't be like just going to some producer or something. And maybe it wouldn't do well. And I was worried about what that would mean to my other career. So I used a pen name. I used my initials, Thomas John, and my mom's maiden name, Payne. And which has been great because she's always supported me in all my creative endeavors. But what this has meant is I have these two very parallel writing careers that don't intersect. And most people often don't know. People who find TJ Payne, the book writer, don't know that I write film and TV, and people who find Tom
Mhm.
Hanada don't know that I write books. And there are these two parallel careers, and one is under my dad's family name, and one is under my mom's family name, and it's like very satisfying. But because of that, I'm not the one adapting Intercepts, which I'm actually kind of okay with because I've told the version of the story I want to tell,
Mhm.
and I'm ready to move on.
Yeah, sometimes it's fun to just give your stuff to somebody else creative and see what they come up with.
And the great thing about having self-published it already is my vision's locked in,
Mhm.
and that's nice because one thing from working in film and TV is there's just a lot of cooks, and often they'll give very good notes, sometimes less good notes. Many times it's notes that creatively I might not agree with, but it's necessary for budgetary reasons or
Mhm.
business reasons, and that's fine. But it does create a different product, a different story by necessity. And so it's nice just to have my version there, and it's
Mhm.
locked in, and let people play with it from there.
Yeah. Do you think your experience in, TV and film writing has that impacted your novel writing? Do those two skill sets communicate at all, do you think?
Not intentionally, but most certainly it has, just in style wise, because the first 15 years of my career, I was just trying to get anyone to read my screenplays. And by just virtue of that, I developed a very uh, kind of referred to as a vertical style, where you want the reader's eyes to just go down the page quickly. Every line needs to lead into the next line of dialogue needs to lead into the next one. Every scene ends on a mini cliffhanger, because you're always fighting the attention span of an agent, a producer, an actor, anyone, and they're reading your work over lunch while they're responding to emails. And so you don't want to let them pull their eyes away from the page. And so when I started writing books, I found it, like, that process far more freeing, because there's just a lot more flexibility, both budgetarily, like you can do bigger things, but also just in getting inside the character's head and their thoughts and their feelings. Whereas in film and TV, you're all from the perspective of the camera. But that vertical style, that quick pace, every scene needs a purpose, like that really translated itself into the books. And I think that is just part of my writer's voice now. And it's all from that, trying to fight the attention span of producers. And what's great about books is, unlike screenplays in Hollywood, people who pick up a book want to be absorbed in it. They want to just fall in love with the characters and story and disappear from the world for a bit, as opposed to, in Hollywood, reading a script is homework.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good way of thinking about it. Because I mean, you definitely absorb your readers, and if somebody gets to the end of a chapter, they have to know what happens next. I mean, we do have longer attention spans, I think, but at the same time, you don't want anybody to put that book down for any reason ever.
And the great thing is, I feel people are, with the attention span, I think people are actively trying to train their attention spans back.
I
And
think
that's a
so
really
too.
cool thing. That's a satisfying thing. It's one uh, of the reviews I've gotten on Intercepts. There's a theme that comes up frequently enough, and it always makes me feel really good. And it's people who say, "This is a book that got me back into reading."
Hmm.
And it's like, oh, thank you.
That's like the best compliment anybody could give an author.
And it is, because yeah, it's a breezy, fast read, but and it's just what I do.
Well, how would you categorize your type of horror on a broader level? And that can be thematically or stylistically or however you want to subgenre, however you want to say.
I love horror because it's such a broad genre.
Mm.
And so I feel one thing I love is just the ability to bounce around the subgenres, because I think it keeps me fresher, and it keeps me from the first draft of a book is always rough,
Mhm.
because nothing is working the way you intended it to. In your mind, this was all going to click together so well. And then on the page, it's all so stiff and disjointed. And what's good about jumping between subgenres is it keeps me from looking back on the previous book and being like, "Oh, it works so much better in that one. Maybe I'll just, steal from that one, and that,
Mhm.
that I did this thing at the midpoint. Maybe I need to do that in the new book." So I've kind of jumped from subgenres. My first book, In My Father's Basement, it's about a guy whose father just got arrested for being this horrific serial killer. And this TV producer offers him money to go into death row and interview his father and record the conversation. And so it's very much this kind of true crimey, ripped from the
Mhm.
headlines, father son in prison story, which is very different from Intercepts, which is a more high octane, very thrillery, sci-fi, very graphic horror. And then the venue is, it's a destination wedding where the bride and groom have plotted to kill all their guests because they actually hated all the little things they've done to them. And it's just fun. The venue is just fun. It's very comedic, darkly. It's a dark comedy in many ways. And so they're all very different in
Mhm.
tones. And I like that. I want to keep hopping around because I learn something new every time I write in a different subgenre. And it's just fun keeping things fresh.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, I feel like all of my books are very different. I've got historical creepy nuns, I've got medical horror, I've got serial killers, and yeah, like you said, it keeps you fresh, it keeps it fun, and nobody knows what to expect, which I always like.
Yep.
Well, is there anything you wish we saw more of in the horror world?
I mean, horror is having such a great moment right now. And I shouldn't even say moment. It's going to be here forever.
Yeah.
And uh no, everyone, like, there's so much diversity in
Mhm.
horror, and it is such a wonderful genre for doing anything because horror audiences uh like the unexpected. You actually don't know what you're going to get into when you get
Mhm.
into a horror. Like, other genres, you are almost obligated to give a happily ever after,
Mhm.
or you're obligated to give this crazy twist at 70% of the way through the book.
Mhm.
Like, there's just like certain things that you have to do in other genres, and in horror the only expectation is to be unexpected. And sometimes unexpected could be a happily ever after at the end of a horror book. Like, you don't know if your main character is going to live or die when you pick
Mhm.
up a horror, and and there's just so many more writers who are getting opportunities in the genre now, and that I don't know. I don't want to give any advice to the genre because I think it is just like in such a great place that's moving forward.
I totally agree. I feel like we're in kind of a golden age that's gonna last forever,
Yes,
right?
as all golden ages do, I
Yes,
believe.
notoriously. Well, now it's time for maybe the hardest question I'm gonna ask you, which is what is your favorite horror book and why?
Ooh, favorite horror book? Uh, that is a tough one because Misery is the one that I've always like been jealous of because it's such a simple concept that
Mhm.
is what allows for the complexity of character to come through.
Totally.
If it was like if it was a bigger world or anything, if it wasn't so confined, then Annie Wilkes wouldn't have been able to fill up that space as well as
Mhm.
she does. And it is it is the epitome of cat and mouse. It is one that I'm just so jealous of it, and the boldness of writing a book that is just two people locked in a room like that, and
Mhm.
your main character is completely immobilized. It is just perfection, intention. Annie Wilkes is so unexpected as a
Mhm.
character. Her dirty birdie, like that is it's again, that's another bold choice that it would be so easy for her to be Nurse Ratched,
Mhm.
and she's not. She's something that is wholly her own. So that I think is always going to be top tier. I'll also throw out Stepford Wives is one that for whatever reason
Love
has
that one.
has stuck in my head, and I think that is something what Stepford Wives does so well is there's not a whole lot of horror happening. It's
Mhm.
sunny, it's bright, it's perfect, and that is deeply disorienting and sinister in its own way. And it's actually, I think, been very influential on my writing where there's, with Intercepts, I mean, it's a dark, gloomy, gruesome place, but there's safety there. It's like a
Mhm.
lot of clean white walls. It's underground but well lit. There are guys with guns
Mhm.
guarding things. Like, it's finding those bits of safety, and then you can find just the ickiness and within more
Mhm.
so. And so that Stepford not that Intercepts is anywhere near the Stepford aesthetic, but it is something that when I read that book, I was like, I don't know why I am so uncomfortable for all of this. And so that's just wonderful storytelling.
Totally agree. Two excellent recommendations for sure. So I know we've got the hardcover of Intercepts coming out on May 5th. What is next on the horizon for you?
So I'm working on another book now, hitting pause on TV. Although I do have two shows coming out. There's the that I was a writer on. The Burrows is coming out on Netflix in May, and this is going to be a bit of a genre surprise. But I was also a writer on Little House on the Prairie, coming out in July.
Okay.
Uh, and it was a wonderful experience. I was it's a sweet, heartwarming show, and but now I'm turning the focus back to books. So I have my take on an exorcism story that I'm working on, and yeah, hopefully that comes out next year.
Awesome. Well, that's super exciting. I feel like exorcism books always hit. They're always awesome. They're always fun. Well, any advice for other writers who want to have a career like yours?
Uh, I think the key is for me. For a long time, I was trying to guess what producers wanted.
Mhm.
And I'd go in on pitches and I'd be trying to read the room. And things only started taking off for me once I kind of let go of that and was just let the where my mind takes the story, let that fly and
Mhm.
see where it connects with people. And
Mhm.
so just finding that voice of your own.
Mhm.
And there's a Flannery O'Connor quote that actually always kind of stuck with me. And so anyone who's read Flannery O'Connor, her short stories, knows that her style is very unique. It's very,
Mhm.
and not particularly marketable. And publishers were always trying to pull her in a more marketable direction. And she responded to one of them in a letter that said, I'm amenable to criticism as long as it's within the sphere of what I'm trying to do. I will
Hmm.
not be persuaded to do otherwise. And what I realized after I saw that quote is I didn't know this. The first, I was too amenable to criticism. I was being pulled in
Mhm.
any direction that anyone would give like a half-hearted note on. I'd be like, "Cool, I'm going to rewrite the whole thing to accommodate you, sir."
Mhm.
But also, I didn't know what the sphere of what I was trying to do was often.
Mhm.
And so I wrote, if I was writing a comedy, I was just trying to be funny. If I was writing a horror, I was just trying to be scary. And
Mhm.
it was once I started really drilling down on what I'm trying to say, what I feel, what the actual fear I'm trying to hit in a reader is
Mhm.
that things started happening. And it was just about being more uh, intentional with my own vision.
Mhm.
Then I was able to protect that vision and craft things that uh like hit on that vision better.
Mhm.
And so for me that's when everything started to change was just the knowing what I wanted to do and say and being confident in being able to say it.
That's really good advice because I feel like all too often, especially younger writers, they get a note from an editor and they think, oh my gosh, I have to do this and I have to do it in this way. And then sometimes you lose what you were trying to do in the process.
Yep.
Mhm.
And yeah, you just have to and I think the key is knowing what it is, what you're trying to say, what is that itch you're trying to scratch, what's that weird part of you that you're trying to express and give words to,
Mhm.
and then protect that
Mhm.
and be okay. And when a note comes in that that folds into that idea and that vision, then that's great. Use it because they're talking about something that can help make it better. And
Mhm.
but often sometimes notes come in and they just wanted something different. And that's
Mhm.
fine. Thank them, but you don't have to accommodate that if it's not part of your vision.
Mhm. Definitely. Be true to yourself, everybody. It's good advice. Well, thank you so much. Can you just tell everybody where they can find you and keep up with you and your work?
I am on Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook, and all of those. If you just search for TJ Payne author, I'll pop up. So it's usually tj.payne.author. Payne is spelled Payne. Again, it is my mom's maiden name, so it is with a Y.
Awesome. Well, everybody, go check out Intercepts, get your hardcover copy, and also In My Father's Basement and The Venue. And again, thank you so much. This was an awesome conversation.
Thank you so much for having me.